Beautiful. So let me remind you again that we are at the Connectathon and we are coming to the final session of the Voices of the World's Cities and Places sessions held by Living Cities Action Research Ecosystem in order to give voice to different continents and different places to share the unique experience of understanding and of feeling and sensing the land and the connection to land and the connection to local communities to bridge these beautiful places and weave the threads throughout all the continents. And now we are traveling from South Africa to Europe, to beautiful Cork city in Ireland. And let me introduce our beautiful hosts, beautiful moderators, Valerie Gleeson and Maria Gillen, and they will introduce their guests, their speakers. And let's dive deep into the soulful flow of the Cork city and River Lee, which embraces this city. So please, the microphone is yours, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Marina. This is Valerie here from the beautiful Cork City. I was delighted to actually join the previous session, and there was so many threads actually that mentions that were there. So what I will do is I'll just do a general introduction, if that's okay, and then introduce Maria, our co-host, Ban Fassa, a woman of knowledge of our folklore and storyteller. So we will be weaving a story here today with you collectively, which would be beautiful. And Paddy, it was lovely to hear that you have Irish ancestry. So we'd be delighted, to have, this constant flow between us. And this is the theme, as Marina mentioned, is the soulful flow of a city. We'll introduce then our panel. But for those who don't know, Cork is a harbour city. It's in the very south of Ireland. It is the largest natural harbour in Europe and the second largest natural harbour in the world after Sydney. So you can imagine, the role of the waterways and the sea of the city are have very much been instrumental in how the city and her people have been formed. The River Lee, I suppose, just to give a picture and paint a picture, it flows through and around the city and it forms an island in the centre. So we look at that, maybe look at that island of the centre of the city of Cork as like the beating heart of the city. It rises in the west and it flows east, and it separates and creates a north channel and a south channel, embracing that beating heart of the city, which is also known as the rebel city. So that it'll be interesting to bring that in, right? And the whole area of resilience and how resilient the city is. The central island is a marshland. So actually, Cork is actually a marshland, and is connected, as I say, from the north and the south sides of the city by multiple bridges. And I heard bridges being mentioned many times in the previous. And the connection of those bridges, how it brings the people together in and out of the city. And I heard Paddy mention earlier on in the mother city. So that really resonated with me. And that's what Cork would be to me. That flow through the city and into the open water has served us really, really well, and has been central to its rich maritime culture and trade with the rest of the world. So very much opens us out to receiving and giving into the world. So what we'd like to do today, our panel, is to invite you really to join us in giving voice to the city and to her waterways. So we're delighted to join here today, Connectathon. It's absolutely beautiful to be here in partnership with Living Cities Action Research. And thank you, Marina, for bringing us into this beautiful collaboration. We've known each other for a number of years, and it's just only growing more and more. So the connection, little do we know that simple little connection. I think we joined together on a panel 3 or 4 years ago on another integral conference, and we've stayed very much connected and have developed a lovely friendship since then. So as I mentioned, our panel co-host Maria Gillen, Ban Fassa, a woman of knowledge in Gaelic Irish and knowledge of the Irish folklore. We'll also have Dan Boyle, who is a Cork City Councillor within the Cork, obviously within Cork, and is a previous Lord Mayor of the city. We have Fionnuala O'Connell. Thank you, Fionnuala, also for joining us. A community development resource or person who is very much involved in migrant integration into the city. So we'll be hearing from our panel along the way. Karina Healy, thank you, Karina, for being here. It's lovely to see you. I know you're dialing in from another part of the west of Ireland today. Karina is a coordinator of the Lantern Project with the Nano Nagle Centre, which is just a beautiful centre within Cork. So we'll hear all about that. And Barry McCormack. So Barry, myself and Barry have known one another for a number of years. Barry is a regenerative leadership coach, very much connected to the land, and we'll hear all about the work that he does, but also a former member of the Irish Defence Forces and the Irish Navy, so very much connected with the sea. So I suppose with that introduction, we'd, as we say, love to invite you into this weaving of story, and would love to invite Maria to join us now in relation to starting with that story.
Dies Murugwivugwina Ushla is Misha Moira Shanaki Corky. Hello everybody, my name is Maria Gillen and I am known as the storyteller based in Cork. There's so many threads already. I've been listening in and I've been trying to keep myself in the bubble as well to represent Cork and what Cork and Ireland can add to the global chat that we're having here today. What a fantastic use of technology, weaving the ancient and the new together. Thank you to Marina for bringing us all together, and to our fantastic leader here in Cork, Valerie Gleeson, a networker like no other, because her heart is in it and her soul and her spirit. And how much have we heard of that during the morning? How many times have people said, not just our fantastic intellect, but our heart and our soul, our gut needs to be involved in this. So before I begin, before I tell you the beautiful Cork story, I want to include our indigenous language of Gaeilge, of the Irish. From Gaeilge comes Dríochta, magic. And this comes from the Dree people, the Druid people. So we have a very big hold on magic. Einstein said magic was anything that works that cannot yet be explained. What a beautiful way of putting it. And in the Irish language, like so many other languages across the world, we say things like Tá ochris orm, the hunger is upon me. We know we are separate from the hunger. We know this too shall pass, and that soon we will be feeling a different emotion. So instead of saying I am, which places us 100% into that emotion, we give ourselves room for maneuver and for shape shifting. I am very proud of the Irish storytelling culture. There are 5 deep wells of storytelling in my country, and since I started to visit Nova Scotia and Marrakesh and New York, I find that these are resonances that are echoed throughout the world. So to name the 5 deep wells from my culture, we have the 3,000-year-old myths and legends that are signposts on our road. We have the stories of our stones, and we will explore those stories today because they are the voice of our city, of the people who went before, who are here now, and who are to come. We have the stories of our diaspora, many of whom had to leave against their will. We have the Ban Fassa or Mana Fassa stories that lovely Valerie has mentioned already, which would be the wise woman stories, and I'm a custodian. But we also have the Fear Fassa, the male stories that are so important to the male population of this country and probably beyond. And finally, a very important genre of stories that we will also explore here today are the co-created stories. When people come to our maritime city, we weave in the threads of their stories with our own stories. We even borrow stories that are so important that they leave an indelible mark on our brains, and we claim those stories as our own. Stories travel the world, and they're meant to do that. And so with the story from Cork, I am going to show you what it was like for a woman to come into Cork, a past Cork. And when we tell stories like that, we make it safe. When we tell stories from a long distance of time or from a long way of change of culture, we make those stories safe. I was going to tell the story of Kyo Driachta and the Banaltra, so the magical mist and the nurse, and perhaps another time over a pint of Murphy's or a pint of Beamish, we will talk about that story. But as I listened with my Banfassa ears, Gá Cluasa, 2 ears to listen, ein veil, 1 mouth to tell, the story changed in my landscape, and I hope my lovely Cork team will forgive me for that. It was the years of the 1930s, coming towards the end, and war was brewing, then raging all around this little island country. Nothing could come in to this little island country, and very little could leave. And people who were born in this era remember the first time they saw the vibrant colour of an orange or a banana and tasted the fruit that was not from these shores. Here in Cork we were lucky, for we are in the golden vale of Ireland, and there was plenty of bread and butter, potatoes and vegetables to share in between us, for it was a sharing. In those days, everybody was interdependent with one another. They had sayings like the silent hand. Don't talk about the good that you do for your neighbour, for you will never know when the knock will come on your own door, the knock of fate, when you will need the help of your friends and you will not want it spoken about. In this time there was a handsome man. His name was John, and all of the women of Cork, well, they had the glad eye for John. They lined up against the wall in St. Francis Hall, a very famous place where people danced and sang and told stories and met their matches. But John's eyes went further than his own city, and a beautiful woman came in. Her name was Nancy. She was so exotic, with beautiful black hair and shining blue eyes. And because she was a seamstress, she always was turned out beautifully in a time when there were not many clothes around at all. And soon it was that John and Nancy were walking out. Oh, and the jealous eyes of the women of Cork on this woman who had come in to claim one of their favourite sons. Soon enough they got married and they started their family. It was a Cork very different than the vibrant city that we know today. There was very little accommodation, and what was there was considered to be slums by the rest of Europe. In the marshes of Cork City, where the Kyo Driachta, the magical mists, rises up from the river, that's where they started their family in one big room. And she was able to take orange boxes that were plentiful in the docks of Cork, and she was able to make bits of furniture out of them. She would put a red cloth across the top and a little candle on top, and when the candle cast its light around the walls, you could have been anywhere. You could have been in fairyland, and magic happened there. And she began to tell the stories to her own children. John was a great worker and a popular man and had loads of work in the docks of Cork. They didn't have a lot of money, but they had a lot of love. And then came the terrible news that the work in the dock had dried up for weeks, for months, and it was difficult to make ends meet, even with the sewing that Nancy took in. So he came to her one evening and he said, Nancy, I will have to leave this place to go to England with some of our neighbours, and we will send the money back. Her heart was broken as he left on the ship down our River Lee into the Irish Sea and across the water to our nearest neighbour. At first the letters came thick and fast between them, he telling her of all the excitement of London and how to save money they were sharing beds. He would get out of the bed in the morning and the man that was on night shift would get into the bed. And this way meant he could send her a little bit more money back. She was so proud of her man. And she would take the money that he sent and she would roll it up and she would put it into the middle of the tea caddy, and she would think how excited he would be to know that he had been blessed with a great saver, and maybe they could afford their own house down the road. For to have a little home of your own was the dream of every Irish heart. And then a letter. A letter came through the door, a big, fat, yellow envelope with the emblem of Cork City, the safe harbour upon it. She tore it open, and because it was fat, she thought it must have positive news. And she read it and she reread it and she couldn't stop smiling. And she said to her children, when your father comes home, he will find out that we have a beautiful new house, a house in Grana-Braher, and when we sit in our house, we will look over the city, the 7 hills, and it will be amazing. And it turned out like what she said. She carried those orange boxes up the hill to her new home. She laid them out in a great bench in front of the picture window. She covered it with the red cloth that she so cherished, and she sat her children in steps and stairs upon it. As the glimmer man, the gas man of Cork, lit all the lights of the city, it was as if the city itself turned into fairyland, and her children were taken away with the magic of it all. But the letters from her husband started getting more sparse. First they came once a week, then once a month. Then the confirmation of her eldest was coming up, and no extra money and no words of love for the son that he had adored. So she had to make up those words of love. And then one night, in the middle of the night, a great knock on the door. After the glimmer man had been, after the lights of the city had been quenched. She ran down the stairs, and her children sat in steps and stairs, looking through the banisters to see what was going on. She opened the door to the policeman. Oh my God, she said, and is the news bad, and will you tell me? Come with me now, he said. Come with me and you will be told everything. She put on her little shawl and she wrapped it around her heart to keep it safe as they walked down Cathedral Road of Cork. They turned left down Shandon Street, where you could buy everything from a needle to an anchor, and so it is even to this day. They crossed the bridge into the cold quay of Cork City, and there they came to the police station. As she wandered in through the front door, she couldn't even hear the buzz of excitement from the people who recognised her face. What's Nancy May doing here? What could she have been up to? Oh, how the mighty have fallen, they said. But she heard none of it, because she was so upset. And when the policeman brought her to the back room and opened the door, the priest was there with his stole. And when he invited her to sit down, and he himself stayed standing, she knew then that the news was serious. Tell me, Father, and tell me, and is he dead? She said. He's not dead, said the priest, but better for you and your family if he had been. For he left this place when he was 18 to work across in the UK. And there he married. And there he had a family. And because you are the second family, you have no rights. She couldn't take it in. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. He took the stole from around his neck then, and he put it around hers. And then he looked at the policeman. The seal of the confession is on this room. Do you understand, my boy? I do, Father, said the priest. No one will hear anything from me. And then he put the stole around her neck, and he said, we'll be telling no one now that you slept with a married man. The shock of it then. How would this affect her children? He could see it in her eyes. No one outside of this room will know of your circumstances. Do you understand me, Nancy? It's important. I do, Father, she said, and there is no chance that he will ever come home and break this secret. He has been told to stay away. I understand, Father, she said, as one big fat tear rolled down her face. She thought then that she had come to this city with no friends, no family, no one to tell this thing to. How would she cope with it all? The policeman walked her back up the hill of Cork to her home, but the priest was not yet finished. It was different times when the people looked after one another. So he called in the old hens, and he spoke to Madge, and he said, Madge, Nancy has no man now. She is on her own with those children. In that he was telling no lie, and Madge knew better than to question him. Can you make sure to give her the silent hand to stand shoulder to shoulder with her? Of course, Father, she said, sucking on her cigarette and marshalling the women in her head. The very next day, Madge arrived at her door with a big pot of stew. Hello, she said. Hello, said Nancy, who hadn't slept very well. Well, no, she said, my fella thinks I'm a great manager, but I bought twice what I needed this week. I don't know what was going on in my head. Will you take this stew off my hands and don't tell the world what's going on? Oh, I'd be delighted, said Nancy, knowing what Madge was doing. So she took the pot in, and then Madge said, you'll give me back my pot now. That was a wedding present. I'll empty it into my own, she says, and give it to you right. No, she says, I'll call tomorrow to see how you're doing. 2 days later, she got a call from Mrs. Duggan, another little knock on the door. My fella over there in England, oh my God, he's a disgrace altogether. He's after buying clothes for the children. And I told him that I was after buying clothes in the Colca and that I was doing them up as if they were new. Will you take them off my hands for God's sake? Sure, if the children got 2 suits of clothes, they'd expect it every year. And so it was that when that Christmas came, Nancy's children walked up through the middle of the North Chapel, dressed as if they'd come out of a bandbox, and their stomachs full of the stew that she made last, adding into it pearl barley and potatoes to thicken it and to lengthen it. And when the priest asked, and how are you, Nancy, how are you? Madge stood in front of her and put her arm around her. Father, sure she's one of our own. The best compliment you could ever get from my city. Sin é mo scéal, that is my story, a story of past resiliences that we could bring into the future.
Oh, Maria, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that and that sense of Cork. And, you know, as somebody from Cork myself, and even just the streets you were talking about, the way of community supporting one another resonates hugely for me in my heart. So thank you for sharing that with everybody here and giving a sense of what Cork is. And as you say, what Cork was, what Cork is, and what Cork can become. So what I'd love to do now is to invite, you know, the members of our panel into the and hear their voices, and love to hear what about the work that they do within Cork, within the city, and you know, why is it that they do this work? You know, the wonderful work that they do. So maybe Dan, if that's okay, Dan, I'd love to invite you in first. So as mentioned earlier on, Dan is a Cork City Councillor, and up to recent months was the Lord Mayor of Cork City. Dan is also an author. And so Dan, I'd love to share your voice of Cork City and the work that you do in the city. So thank you, Dan.
I'd be happy to, Valerie, and hello to everyone. Well, I'm an elected Cork City Councillor, and as he said, the most recent Lord Mayor of the city, which has been a huge honour. The City Council is centred in Cork City Hall, which is a very prominent building on the edge of the city centre island. And it's actually the 7th building on that location. The City Hall has been in 7 forms. The most recent time it was rebuilt was in 1936, and it had to be rebuilt because the previous City Hall was destroyed in an act of war, which was a sad time in the life of the city. But the new City Hall also represented a new and evolving and changing Cork, but also kept the relationship with the river, which is a very valuable and important part of being from Cork. From my own family history, my mother was actually born on the city centre island, on the main street of the island, Patrick Street. And I've also felt that particular identity with the heart of the city and the relationship it has with the river and the island city centre linked by so many bridges. I think we're coming close to 50 bridges across the river on both streams. We'll be opening a number in the next couple of months, and the Crosses Green, the old brewery section. And we like to have that relationship with the water, with the river, from its birth in West Cork to where it eventually exits the sea at Roche's Point. And one of the pleasures I had as Lord Mayor in the recent year was a ceremony called Throwing the Dart, which you go out in ceremonial garb. You're taken out in an Irish naval vessel into the middle of the harbour. You sail towards Roche's Point, which is the opening of Cork Harbour, and you engage in this ritual where you throw the dart, which is now tied down and comes back. They're not wasting darts all the time, but the symbolism of the exercise is that the city is calling its jurisdiction over the harbour by how far the Lord Mayor is able to throw the dart. So that type of memory, that type of ritual, that type of connection, I think it also explains the relationship that Cork has with the river and the harbour and the water. I suppose the other element is that Cork has been changing over the recent years. It's becoming more multicultural. The fact that we are a port city means that people from other places have been attracted to live and work among us. And I think we're richer as a city because of that. I think we're better as a city because of that. But it hasn't always been part of our history. And if I can go back to my mother, her memory was leaving Ireland on the water. She actually emigrated to the United States in the 1950s, and her method of emigration was by ship. She was on a ship called the SS America going to America. And one of the stories she used to tell was her last vision of Cork Harbour being the spire of St. Colman's Cathedral in Cove. So it's, while it's an important part of our history, I think it's also something to know that that history has had good elements and sad elements. But it's part of who we are, and it's what we've become. And it's certainly been my honor to carry those memories. In relation to what we're becoming, I like to think that Cork is recognised as a city that people are encouraged to come to and live and work in. As I've said, I still play a role outside of the office of Lord Mayor, deputising for my successor. Yesterday, I had a very vibrant event at an Indian community festival. And next week, it could be an event with the Ukrainian community. And Cork is now a patchwork quilt of many different communities, many different cultural experiences, and all are adding to a new Cork and reinterpreting what Cork is and what Cork can be. And it's certainly a privilege for me as an elected public representative to be involved in that and trying to respond to that, and to what extent I, as an individual, as a citizen, influence that. I think one thing you'll know about Cork and its people is that we don't undersell ourselves. We have a belief and a confidence that is unique, I think, to ourselves as a people of this particular region. And I think that we use that confidence to share what we think is great and good about Cork with as many people as possible. And maybe this conversation is another opportunity to do that.
Thank you so much, Dan. It was lovely. It was really, really lovely to hear those. And it's really interesting. We talk about connection even this morning, and this is going to become maybe a bit of a surprise. I was speaking to my sister who lives in Perth. And actually, she's married to your first cousin, one of the Sharkies. So
David. No,
David. So just even through the conversation, I was telling her about this today, and I was saying who was coming out. She said, "Oh, I know Dan. I had been up to Donegal to where his father was, and
an Islander."
Yes, exactly. So there's just a little bit of a surprise even amongst our own panel of the stories, and as we talk and share, there's so much to learn from one another. So thank you so much for that. I thought it was beautiful there when you spoke about the tapestry of integration of different people and different cultures coming into our city. So I thought it might be a nice introduction for Fionnuala. So Fionnuala to come in, a member of our panel who works with the migrant community in Cork. Fionnuala is a member of the social inclusion team within Cork City Council. So Fionnuala, welcome in, and we'd love to hear your voice.
Hi everyone. Great to be here. My name is Fionnuala O'Connell. Just to connect to the last panel, I was actually born in South Africa in Free State, to a Liberian mom and an Irish father, and so I moved back and forth to Liberia and Ireland. But when I was hearing the stories and stuff, I just got really excited and hearing about Ubuntu. And it brought me back to a lot of work that we've done in Cork around Ubuntu with the young people that I previously worked with. So I'm an integration worker, and I'm a part of the local authority integration team and the larger community social inclusion team in Cork City Council. So I initially moved to Cork for college. It was the only place that had the course I wanted to study. From the Midlands, the countryside, I was so scared of coming to the big city. So I moved here and I studied, and I decided to stay because Cork held me. And I think it's the longest place I've ever lived, been in one place And I think it's become home with the people and the communities and the connections, the networks you form here. It makes it really difficult to leave. And so that's why part of my job as an integration worker, I had to work to integrate myself into Cork City. So I have a lot of my own kind of experiences to draw on when I'm working with people. And the key people I work with are people that come to Ireland to seek international protection, people that came in through the Ukrainian pathway through temporary protection, people with status in the community, program refugees. And part of our job is integration from day one. So prioritizing integration when people arrive. And this can look like navigating the international protection system, navigating the Irish system, and then connecting them with local services, groups, and communities, tackling barriers and promoting integration. And so when I go to people and they're like, what is integration? I'm like, I need to know who you are. And a lot of the time, people are very hesitant because they, some people feel like they need to erase who they were when they are trying to integrate. And so part of my job is, I'm here to try and integrate every part of you. So what church do you go to? Do you go to a church? What food? Like, so linking them with do you like going out? Do you like comedy? Do you like movies? This is the links. These are where you can get access, education, employment, every aspect of someone. We try to get them into a group, a community, where they can find some kind of a balance and stability. And because we're in the social inclusion community sector, we're surrounded by amazing initiatives and projects. And we have the Cork Learning Cities, we have the Cork age-friendly cities. Like, we have so many different people around us. We're seated right in the middle of the room, and we're surrounded by sports and all of these amazing projects. So getting information and learning about what everybody else around us do helps us create the best kind of networks and links for the people we work with, to give them more opportunities to link into the communities where they live. So that has been really effective. And as you go as well, I'm sure it's everywhere around the world, you actually don't realize how many amazing services you're surrounded by until you actually start walking there, taking the bus to meet everyone. And then you realize, like, the city is full of amazing people doing amazing things, more than you ever thought. So that's a big part of my job, and I've had the privilege of just learning more about the city and walking through the city. And because I need to be able to tell someone, okay, you need to go to this organization. When you go there, you'll see a red door. When you walk in, you'll see the receptionist. The receptionist is called called Barry. So it's those connections, because it's so terrifying for people a lot of the time to make that first step. But if you can guide them through it, make them feel like when they arrive to that place, that's my friend, that's my colleague, this is someone I know by name, and they're going to welcome you into their service. And so that's where integration can make or break it, because if I'm linking someone with an organization, I need to make sure it's a place where they're going to feel welcome and have a sense of belonging. And I think with our amazing interagency in Cork, we've been able to link and connect people to that way of thinking, those values. So I can talk forever, but I'm going to stop it there.
Thank you so much for that introduction to you, Fionnuala. And what I really loved as well, when you talked about your own lived experience in relation to integration. And I think that's just very central, I suppose, to the integral approach to community development is really our own lived experience, and how that then can influence how we relate and work with others. So I think that's really, really beautiful. I think when we spoke initially, there was something you said, and I thought it was particularly interesting for me. And I had mentioned that Cork being like a proud, rebellious woman, which you agreed with. But one thing you said is that, but you need to be willing to engage with her. And I thought that was really, really interesting, is that maybe she's a little bit aloof, is she? Is she a little bit aloof, and you need to kind of nearly come forward yourself to introduce yourself to the city of Cork. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I 100% agree with that, because to be honest, when I first came to Cork, I came on a bus. My dad put me on a bus. He said I went for the open day to the college, and I was terrified. I came from the Midlands, I came from Laois to the city, and I'm on Google Maps trying to find my way to the college. And the first time I said I couldn't do it, I was so intimidated by Cork. It was so different from what I had known. And I made a decision to actually take a break, a gap year, to work, because I didn't feel ready for her. I didn't feel ready to face this journey that was ahead of me. And I went away and I worked and I worked. And the next year I came back and I was ready to engage, and I went in full full steam ahead. But I think for me and for a lot of people, sometimes you need that. But I walked into Cork as if I've always been there, with a confidence. Um, Even the way my hair, I used to always, part of growing up, I always felt different. So even like I decided I'm gonna let my hair free. So that was one thing. When I came back, I was myself, meeting her. So that was really, I think that's part of why I have such a connection to Cork, because it made me kind of grow into myself and be confident in moving through the city and moving through who I was in the city.
Beautiful. No, that's really beautiful, and I think, sharing that kind of how our own experience of the city and how we bring that forward is really important. So thank you so much for that, Fionnuala. If I'd love to introduce Karina. Karina, Karina would like to join us and maybe share her story. So Karina is a community development coordinator of the Lantern project with the Nano Nagle Centre in Cork City. And just a little bit of backstory for myself in relation to connection. My mother, who is now 89 years of age, was born directly across the road from the Nano Nagle Centre. So I've always been aware of the work of Nano Nagle, and my grandmother spoke of keeping the door open. They lived over a pub, so if anybody knows the Nano Nagle Centre, which I'm sure the Cork people will, there was a pub across the road, which is no longer a pub, and my mother lived upstairs with her family of 8 children. And they used to leave the door open downstairs, so if there was any people who were maybe out in the weather or homeless, that they could sleep in the hallway. And to me, that was always a huge attraction of the Nano Nagle Centre. So Karina, if you'd like to come in and maybe tell us about the Nano Nagle Centre, where it's come from and the great work that you do there.
Thanks, Valerie. Even though we're on fibre network here, I'm hoping that the connection is good enough for the conversation. Just to say that Nano Nagle Place is in South Parish, and it feels to me like it's a place just full of history, and there's lots of kind of connections to my own past there, because my grandparents lived around the area, but my mom and dad started off their married life right next to the river, and they were living there where the old exchange was, where the school is currently, but they were flooded and they had to move out to the suburbs, out to Toker. And my grandparents on my mother's side were Shawleys. They were from the Colquay. They lived in Kyle Street. Yes, up the Shawleys. They were dealers, and they used to deal in clothes, and they used to have a stall there. And I remember when I was a small girl going in to visit my auntie Annie, And she would have all these incredible phrases like, "You're as welcome as the flowers in May," and all lovely, a sense of real hospitality and welcome. So I know in my heart the community development that we do in Nano Nagle Place and the work that I do, it feels very much like part of who I am and what I came from in terms of the ability to really communicate with people, be very practical about the needs that people have, and kind of meet people where they're at. And being a true Cork girl myself, I have the accent to go with it, and I really am proud of my Cork heritage. I'm down here on the Ring of Kerry, and my God, I'll never ever be accepted in to the Ring of Kerry because my accent is so strong. I give away all the time that I'm a Cork girl. So we're working in the most magnificent. I actually never use a background, but today I felt it was worthy to just step aside and show you the magnificent gardens in Nano Nagle Place. It's a green oasis in the middle of the city, and it has so many beautiful aspects to it. We have a museum that tells the story of 18th century Cork. We have the story of the Presentation Sisters told, and all the incredible work that they do throughout the world. And we also have, I suppose, the story of the lady herself, Nano Nagle, for which the place is named after. And Nano Nagle and the work that she did and the social justice work that she did. And she did it all, and she was convicted by her own faith, her own belief in living out the gospel of loving people. And again, meeting them where they were at, giving them academic knowledge, but also very practical skills so that they could be empowered and better their lives. So the project that we host in Nano Nagle Place, we work very closely alongside with Cork Migrant Centre. We are part of the same community outreach team, and our project focuses on mainly older adults, and we embrace community education as a means of bringing people together, bringing them together to genuinely, I suppose, feel the benefit of being in a safe space where relationships are nurtured. And along that journey, you may pick up a skill, you may learn something new, you may be blessed enough to produce a product. We produce loads of products. We had a magnificent art installation launched this week in the University of Cork, University College Cork in the Glucksman, and it was called Tend Your Garden. And a lot of our focuses, we include nature as part of the education experience, but also because everything we do focuses on well-being, we acknowledge at all times the incredible power of nature. So even in the most recent launch of our art installation, the focus was looking at the whole quote that the installation was built around was like, while I'm pondering what could be, I focus on what is in front of me. And it's the hope around that and the personal journey, and people depicted all different types and aspects of vegetation, flowers, leaves, everything that kind of suggested their personal feelings, stories, emotions at the moment. And it was an immersive experience that we created up there in the Glucksman. There was all these magnificent art pieces, but we also had a soundscape that was made by a young man studying music in Dublin, and we had aromatherapy oils filling your senses. So it was a complete immersive experience for anybody that went along. And next Tuesday, we have the joy of launching a currach, and it's called Gra na Farige, the Cork the Currach's name is being birthed from the time they started building the Currach. So we work alongside Mehelmara because we've always recognised that the water and the river in Cork City is just so integral to the history of us, to the journey of us. And to have respect and to have a relationship with the waterways is just vital. So as part of our piece, people went to Mehelmara from our community of people that are engaging in our courses. They learned and made a boat. They learned the woodwork skills. They worked as a team. They've created this gorgeous Dunfanny Currach. And now on next Tuesday, we get to celebrate each participant that has been part of it. We get to celebrate with another organisation called Mehelmara, which is a mighty organisation that we have so much respect for. And we get to give people the joy of actually sitting in a Currach and being on our waterways. For some people, it may be a first. For some people, it may be just a joy to see it all happen. And we're going to have a Rebel Brass Band, is the name of the band that we have to play the music as part of the celebration. And we will be honoured to have a representative from the Lord Mayor's office come and celebrate with us. And it'll truly be a magical experience for everybody who comes along. And the most important bit of all that is that each person that was involved in the making of it have the joy of being part of something bigger than themselves. And you can see their chests rise up, and the feeling of pride and the feeling of having created something gorgeous. So that's a little bit of the work that we're involved in at the moment. We have about 170 people coming in to do courses for the autumn, and you can learn anything in the Lantern Project, from crochet to mindfulness to storytelling and everything in between. And the only criteria for being part of our community is people have identified themselves that they have experienced some level of vulnerability in their lives, and that they really could do with the support and the kind of space that we offer in terms of offering community education. So we're looking forward now to inviting people back in to the Nagle place to start the courses. We've already started this week. We have a crochet ladies group that are very much, I suppose, the heart of the project, along with a men's group that we have happening there every Monday and Thursday afternoon. And the people that come through the door, like, they have been referred to us by occupational therapists, councillors, GPs, mental health nurses, and sometimes through other support groups. So a lot of people would maybe be in recovery, or people would be having some difficulty whereby it caused them to be separate from the community in some way. And we feel that our Nagle place is such a magnificent welcoming space, and such a kind of a haven of peace and nature and, I suppose, kindness. People, they see that. They see the authenticity of the welcome that they receive. They see the benefit that it has been to others. And I suppose it's a huge privilege to do the work that we do in Nagle Place. And I feel really honoured to be part of something so special. And we have an international reach because of the Presentation Sisters. They're all over the world, and they come to visit us, and it's a place of pilgrimage for them. And they're delighted with what's happening. We're the living legacy of Nagle. Her work continued in this time. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Karina. It's so beautiful, and having been to the Nagle Centre on many occasions, it really is an oasis in the middle of the city. Just an absolute oasis of peace, and even just being able to wander in from the city up the steps into the gardens, you know, even if you want to sit and read a book, it is just so beautiful. You might just share, just briefly, if that's okay, just a little bit about Nagle herself. And I suppose it's really honouring the woman that she was, a Cork woman, and what she has created, which is now enduring with all the work that you're doing. Would you mind sharing just for others?
Yeah. I'd say maybe the details are never good with me. But I can tell you this, I think myself and Nano have the same boss. She has a real faith and belief in a higher power, and she was very convicted by her faith and about living out the gospel. But she was a woman of massive courage, because at the time where she decided that she came from a family of wealth. She was educated in France. She was a lady of privilege, really. But when she came back to Cork, having travelled, she saw the deprivation of the Catholic poor people in Cork City. And she was called on in her heart to support these people. And she knew a little bit about education being the key to getting employment, to getting people to be empowered. So she used to go out into the streets of Cork City and find children and women. And she started to teach them. She taught them in small schools, and the first schools were right near the site of where Nagle Place is now. And we still actually have the original door that people would have knocked to get through into the room where Nagle would teach them. So she taught them everything from, I suppose, the academics, the reading, writing, and arithmetic, but she also taught them skills like sewing and needlecraft so that they could make a living for themselves. And she also taught the catechism. So the Catholic people at that time, it was penal laws in Ireland. So we were under the rule of the English, and it was against the law for the Catholic people to be educated. And she was brave and so courageous that she just ignored all that. And she got those children and she taught them, and the women, and she taught them. So it was an incredible, I suppose, act of bravery that she defied the law, because anything could have happened to her, but she evaded all that. And she spent many years as a lay person. But as she was aging, she knew that her work needed to be continued. She could see the importance of what she was doing. And in her late 50s, I think, she started her order of the Presentation Sisters. She had engaged another order, I can't remember the name of them, Fionnuala, you might help me, the French order of people, of sisters.
Is it the Benedictines?
No, it'll come back to me. Nope. Not my detail is not my thing, but they were an enclosed order, and she wanted something different. And the Presentation Sisters, they were a different order of sisters, of nuns, of holy people. Their mission was to be out and to be able to access the people and to bring the people in. So the Presentation Sisters, it came from that, and now they're all over the whole world. They're well known for their work in education, and they have a beautiful focus on climate action. And I suppose what's happening in Nagle Place is a microcosm of what's happening all over the whole world. And even though our project we think is unique and it's called the Lantern, but many projects are called the Lantern, connected with the Presentation Sisters, because she was known as the Lady of the Lantern that used to travel around the streets. The Ursuline Sisters. Thank you so much, Fionnuala. I couldn't think. So it was the Ursuline Sisters that she tried to engage, and she did for an amount of time, but it didn't meet the purpose that she needed. So the Lady of the Lantern is such a beautiful symbol and such a beautiful kind of, I suppose, image to think that she did shine light in darkness, and she did do what she set out to do, was bring in a bit of hope, a bit of education, and along with that came all the rest of empowerment and personal development.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Karina, for that, and I suppose giving context to who Nagle was, and you know, the impact that an individual can have on a community. and which is like even the connections that we're talking about here today and across the world for the last 22 hours and continuing. It's just those little connections and the impact that they can have. And the bridges that we're building, which we've mentioned a few times before. I think, Dan, you mentioned the amount of bridges that you mentioned in the city, and more to come, actually, is after blowing my mind. So thank you for that, Karina. Thank you so much. I'd now like to introduce everybody, and Barry, invite you in. Barry McCormack. I've known Barry now probably for 2 or 3 years. We're kind of been following a similar journey in life and in relation to regenerative leadership. So Barry, love to invite your voice in and maybe share your story. We'd love to hear it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Valerie, and thanks for hosting the Cork gang, and Marina for putting this together. I think it's an amazing event and body of work, and hopefully you'll get so much for it and from it and for us and in your research. And I'm delighted I caught the end of our friends in South Africa, like, you know, and Ubuntu was mentioned, and you know what they were talking about sits right in my garden in terms of, you know, connecting to nature. And so anyway, a little bit about myself. I'd be referred to what's known as a blow-in, and a blow-in in the common vernacular in Cork is somebody who's not originally from Cork but has washed up on the shore or come up with the tide, or, you know. So I'm a blow-in, and that means I came to Cork I first came to Cork in the early 80s as a wee boy, come to do athletics in the RTC. But I found myself coming back in 1994 to join the Irish Navy, and we have a very small navy, which hopes to expand, given everything that's going on in the world. Was the naval base is in an island in the harbour called Haulbowline, and it was set up there by our ex government, I suppose. The British Empire set it up there in Cork Harbour, and the Irish Navy has been set up there. So I came there in 1994, and I served in the military for 22 years, and I would have served on the water and in the water because I was actually a diver. So I would have spent a lot of time up around Cork in various different operations. And then I found myself leaving the Navy and going into a multinational. Cork has kind of transformed itself in the last 20 years with many foreign companies basing themselves in Cork from a tech and pharma perspective. So again, Valerie, you've the analogy here of the lifeblood. Like, there's all this new energy and new nutrients coming into the city all the time, like, you know, being pumped around. And I would have witnessed in that environment many people coming from abroad, sponsoring them into the companies, and they're bringing their own kind of, you know, energies and cultures, which is into the city. Like, so for me, I've been around Cork for 30 years. The transformation has been something else, like in terms of diversity and new energies, and it's quite spectacular to note, to witness the transformation. So the work that the Nano Nagle does and Fionnuala are doing in terms of integration and welcoming these people is so important, like, you know. And I can attest to that, like being welcomed into Cork and being, you know, adopted by Cork in many respects, like, you know. With a man with a loud accent in Cork stands out, but I felt very quickly welcome to Cork, you know, and I think that comes from, you know, it's been mentioned here, like the traveling aspect of a city like Cork. Like, people leave, they come back, they know what it feels like to be in a different place, and that insecurity Fionnuala talked about, of unfamiliar place, to be welcomed, you know, and because it's an inherent within our nature to feel part of, you know, and if you don't feel part of, you can be vulnerable to different aspects in in our societies, and I think Cork has that in spades, because Dan mentioned it, his own mum going away and emigrating, and and then coming back, and recently I've found myself in becoming a coach, a regenerative coach, regenerative leadership coach, whatever that is, that transforms. But effectively, for me, that my story has led me to wanting to help people connect back to nature. And I recently was very fortunate to set myself up on an island in Cork Harbour, another island called Spike Island, Inishpick, to give it his original name, which was originally a monastery set up by, I don't know which monks, I don't know if you'll be able to Google it, but it was a monastery there back nearly 1,000 years ago. And the monks in Christian Ireland, they went to places that had abundant resources, and we talk about Cork being a harbour, a safe harbour. This Inishpick, Spike Island, was a safe place for them to set up the monastery, to do reflection, to connect deeper with nature. So recently, I'll tell the story of how I ended up on Spike Island. Having been on the naval base, which is right next to Spike, for 22 years. Subsequent, I'd never been on Spike Island, but last year I was doing my water sports, I do wing foiling. I found myself, the wind blew me onto Spike Island, and the north shore of Spike Island, and I was just, I come up I rose from the water, and I looked around and went, wow, the island has completely regenerated itself. There we go, Valerie, you got it. Makuda founded the monastery in 1685. But the island of Spike, it's a deep history, but basically the outside of the island has been left alone, essentially. There's no one lives on the island. The island clears out at 6 o'clock, at 4 o'clock every day, because there's a visitor center on which is an old prison. Another story. But anyway, the island has been left alone. There's no cats on the island. There's no dogs on the island. So it's been left to regenerate. So it's completely wild. And the last ferry leaves at 4 o'clock every day, and nature's left alone, And I've been looking for a place to do the regenerative work that I want to do, which is fundamentally connecting people back to nature, in a subtle way, because we've been separated. We've been separated from our nature, and now we see all the effects of that. We think we're living richer lives, but we're poorer. The soul is poorer for the way we live our lives. So I've been looking for a place to really do this immersive nature work, and Spike Island, Inishpick, has it in spades, right? And I recently had a group there during the summer, and Maria was working with me. We did a reflective piece, and really what came up for a lot of people was islands situated, would have been the last place that people seen when they emigrated from Ireland, and that ran deep with people, So there's so much there. There's so much history within Ireland. I'll tell another story. I found myself, when I was in this global multinational, it was a tech company, being kind of a tour guide for Cork Harbour, and so I used to bring people around, and they were fascinated with Titanic, the military history, everything that's gone before, so it's so much richness of the history of Cork. But Cork was known as a garrison town for a long time, because the British Army had set up. Cove was a garrison town. There's forts on the entrance to Cork Harbour. Spike Island was garrison, and actually Cork City was very much a garrison city, and that meant that a lot of Irish men served with the British Empire, and they went away. They would have sailed out of Cork Harbour, went to the Empire, and one particular company ended up in India back at the turn of the century, and they brought back a famous Cork phrase, which is langer. The langer, okay? And people might know, oh my God, you can't talk about the langer. A langer is something, it can be used as a pejorative term. It can be used in many different ways. But if you ever hear someone in Cork calling you a langer, it's not a good thing. But where this comes from, there was a company of Irish, a regiment in India. And in India, they have a monkey called a langer monkey, right? So the Cork the guys in the company were trying to get asleep, and the monkeys would jump down from the trees, and they'd be jumping across the steel roofs and keeping the lads awake up all night. And the Cork lads would be going, them Cheryl Angers kept me up all night, because the monkeys were jumping on and they brought back the phrase, you're a langer, for creating nuisance. And that's weaved into the Cork vernacular now, the langer. So that's just an instance of how we integrate, like, and these phrases, and become part of vernacular, like. So yeah, I went off on a kind of a tangent there. So yeah, and one of the things I'm really interested in is like is biomimicry. Like, in terms of our separation, we need to be more in tune with with nature, and part of that is biomimicry, using nature to, not using nature, but having the synergy with nature, and actually just noticing what nature can lead us. And one of the things I stumbled across in my research for this is like the ancient Chinese have a quote in terms of biomimicry. In times of great winds, some build bunkers, others build windmills. I find a lovely reflection quote to self-help and observe from where our intention should come from in a moment of crisis. We shouldn't build bunkers, we build windmills. And I'd like to leave you with that thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. That was really lovely, and I'd never heard of where the original "You're a Langer" came from. So it's really lovely to hear that, actually. And it's interesting, actually, when you even just the closing, what you said there in relation to windmills. I mean, I suppose even in relation to our harbour now, and when we see of kind of the natural resource that is that harbour, and we talk about regeneration, and in relation to natural resources of electricity or of power and so on and so forth. And we're hearing about what's going to happen out in our harbour in relation to wind generation. So that kind of really connects. It's kind of interesting, and actually I might just pause there for a moment, from hearing the stories of the Cork panel, and maybe invite participants in if anybody has any questions, or maybe because we've seen a number of things there in relation to people saying their own connection to Ireland, which is lovely to see, which isn't surprising, because wherever you go in the world, you'll meet Irish people and people from Cork. So maybe just an invitation if anybody would like to come in and maybe join in the conversation before we continue with the panel. Anybody?
May I jump in and share my own story of connection to Cork? I'm originally from Russia, Rostov-on-Don. That's the southern part of Russia. Now I'm working and living in Oxford for already 2.5 years. And that was funny when I met Valerie online. I was so excited and so glad that she's from Cork, because the most joyful, and I would say the most great Irish pub in my own city is named Cork, and it has pictures of Cork and the Irish symbols, and so I haven't been ever to Cork, to the city of Cork. But this Irish pub is the embodiment of joy, of liveliness, of good mood, of great welcoming people, of Guinness beer, and so everything which is associated with Irish welcoming culture and resilience, I would say. Also, everything is connected for me to the name of Cork. Looking forward to my reconnection with this city and being there in person. So yes, so even despite of the fact that I'm sort of from another part of the world, Cork is a symbol of culture and of Irish
Welcome.
Brilliant, I would say, and everything which is connected to Irish people. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Marina. There's somebody got their hand up there actually. Can somebody let them in relation to somebody wants to join the conversation there. Can you see that? Can somebody open, or can I do that? Can you
Hi,
see that, Marina? Oh yeah, there we go.
yeah, is it okay to speak? Or I'm sick at the moment. I have a cold. I can put my camera on if people want, but it's not going to be pretty.
That's all right. We'd love to see you, but only if you're comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, I read last night the article for the Soul of the Cities for Cork. And it made me think of a time recently because like I have a very, very deep connection for Cork, and that's partly because we would have moved around a lot when I was younger. But Cork was where my grandmother was from, so it was the place that we always came back to. So for me, like I would feel a deeper connection to Cork than I would to other places because you have that contrast. But I was at a hair braiding place because a friend of mine was getting braids and like they were in there for like 7 or 8 hours. Um, but there was this amazing Congolese woman who turned around to me and said, "You're not North Side, I'm North Side." And it made me think of the spirit of Cork as this kind of resilient, powerful woman. And I think a lot of like women did have power in Ireland anyway. I mean, we were before the church, we were allowed to own land. You know, I know things weren't perfect, but there's a deep connection, and even in our legislation, like it's only something small left over, but if you're a homemaker, you're still considered as having contributed and have a contributory pension. So it's only something small, but it's like that acknowledgement of women and the power of women. Um, but I did find when I was reading that article, it absolutely just summed up that the beauty of Cork is that it's so fluid, and because we're a port town, there's so many people come and go. We lived in Cove for a while, and you have like the sailing traditions, the people who came in and fell in love and never left, and there's a beautiful like transitory quality. Um, but a lot of people would actually feel like the Congolese woman because um like my bugbear and my initial reaction is, what do you mean I'm not north side? Like just because I use big words doesn't mean I'm not north side. Um Whereas like when we first moved up to the Holly Hill Knocknaheeny area, and we're talking about maybe 10 or 12 years ago, like the local community college, it would be absolutely bog standard. The places have like courses up to level 5, which is your leaving cert equivalent, whereas the one in Holly Hill only went up as far as level 3, which is kind of your junior cert exam when you're about like about maybe 14, 15, something like that. Um, yeah, and just hearing about the Langer as well, like there's something about Cork humor and stuff, and I very much I associate it more with the North Side thing, probably because that's a place where traditions are held because it is underserved and underdeveloped. But there's also a really good side to that where you still have the characters and you still have like there's two pubs in the North Side that are like 5 minutes from the city that are cash only. And kind of like if you didn't know someone and you walked in there, like you'd get the stares. People would be very friendly, but they'd want to know your life story. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's really interesting, you know, again, I was reflecting on, you know, my own stories and the connection of the, say, the River Lee as an example. And I suppose this is where I'd like to maybe go with maybe our conversation is, you know, the importance that the waterways have had in our own development over our lifetimes. And you know, I would say, so my mother was born, as I mentioned, across the road from the Nano Nagle Centre in the south side, and you know, started her education in the South Presentation. Was similar to what was mentioned earlier on. Her father, you know, to get work actually joined the British forces and moved to the north side of the city because they were given housing there, and they lived in Kerry Hall Road, which would be up off Shandon Street. So I'm very familiar, and I think, you know, the lady that was just speaking there in relation to, you know, you have the beating heart of the city in the centre, and then you have the bridges to the north side and the south side. And even within the city, that sense of, you know, the differences within the city and the parts of the city, but they're all part of who we are, of what Cork is, and every element of the city, and the people of the city are so important. So I remember, you know, even, you know, the stories myself of, you know, from an early age, you know, visiting Guggenbarra. So, you know, even I'm going to follow the line of the River Lee now. So, and then I would like to, you know, maybe ask the panel to maybe share some of their memories of their time near the waterways. But, you know, spending time in Guggenbarra, where the River Lee, the source of the River Lee, and you've got the beautiful oratory there, from St. Finbarr's oratory on a little island again. And it's really striking me the amount of little islands, Cork being an island, Spike being an island, Hull being an island, the lock, you know, and it's really interesting actually as we talk about it. But then, you know, later on in life, being involved, I was very much involved in athletics in the city. So maybe, Barry, we might have come across one another in the RTC, although there's a few years difference there. But I was used to run with Cork Athletic Club, where I would have known Karina's brother and sister. But where we used to meet, so I lived in Bishopstown, right? So which was very much seen as, you know, for my mother moving from the north side to Bishopstown was kind of saying, ooh, that's kind of an interesting move. But we used to meet, the friends used to always meet at the Lee Bats. So this was the Bats, the outdoor Bats, which was actually the River Lee, but there was an outdoor swimming area. And it's a lovely memory I have of my childhood, of where I learned to, you know, meet other young people or learn to grow up and get to know yourself or whatever. So I suppose what I'm saying is that the river has been very much part of my own development, of my own sense of self. And it was only even yesterday I was actually on the site of the Lee Bats. I was there with my daughter, the hotel that's on that site now, looking across the water to the weir there. And that is the point actually where the river splits into the north and the south channel, which is really, really interesting. And it kind of embraces the city. One goes down around the side of St. Finbarr's Cathedral and University College Cork, and the other side goes along the North Mall, you know, kind of hugging kind of the North Gate Bridge and heading up into Shandon, which I've been very, very familiar with. Along the way as well, you've got, you know, the Mardyke, the beautiful Mardyke, and the Fitzgerald's Park where we played. And I suppose the words of the Cork anthem, right? You know, where we sported and played neath her green leafy shade along the banks of my own lovely Lee. So it's very much the river has nearly held me through my, I suppose, my development, my maturation, my continuing maturation, and then right out into the city as we head out into down by Blackrock Castle. My mother always spoke of coming down from Shannon Street, and they would head over to Blackrock Castle, and they would spend time by the water there. It was like a holiday for them, but literally they were just crossing the water. They were just crossing one of the bridges to Blackrock Castle. And then in more recent years, I suppose, very lucky is that my father-in-law used to sail out of Crosshaven, actually one of the oldest sailing clubs in the world, and used to bring us out into the harbour. So, you know, having access to the water has been very much part of my memory of growing up in the city, that has supported my development and my love for the city, and the role that Cork plays in Ireland and continues to play in Ireland and to the world. So I suppose I'd love just to invite other members of the panel, you know, into, you know, your memories, maybe some of the memories of how the waterways and the maritime history has supported you in your self-development. and which supports you as you bring yourself into your community.
So Val, I'm just going to come in there with, you know, the songs that people would sing as they were going off on their holidays. So there's great stories. I collect stories from the elders of Cork, but as they tell me the stories, they're my own memories too. So they would talk about getting on the train, you know, to Youghal, and you know, families would have 5 or 6 children. When I was growing up, in my mother's time, they were 9 or 10 children, you know. So if the mothers of Mayfield were bringing their kids down to the train station, it was an unspoken rule that we were all going to run under the arms of the Kigara, the inspector, and they'd be asking the mothers, how many children have you with you? And they'd be saying, oh, 2, sir, 2. But there could be 6, you know. And then when you'd be going down to Youghal, you'd be singing songs like, we all go down to Youghal, we let the baby fall. Me mother came out and gave me a clout and gave the poor baby a bottle of stout. So that was full of the humour and the rhythm, because our town has 7 hills, you know, and because we're built on the wetlands, you know, we shapeshift an awful lot. At one time we were known as the Venice of the North. So all of that was, I suppose, part of the musicality and the stories that I grew up with. And one of my favourite stories, only from last Wednesday, when I was up with the women of Mayfield, among whom I grew up, they said, girl, you can take your Spain now and you can take your American holidays, but there was nothing like crossing the river to the Roaches, to the beautiful castle, you know, the Black Rock Castle, and you bring a billy can and you light a fire, because you would not give the 60 pence to the woman in the house to give you hot water. And then you make tomato sandwiches, but they're not like the tomatoes we have today. We grew them ourselves and there was mate in them. And you'd sprinkle a bit of salt on them and they'd be soggy, and there'd be nothing more delicious. Those are the holidays that light up their minds even to this day, and they didn't cost anything, you know. So yeah, so I suppose that would be, when you're talking, Valerie, that's the bit that kind of reverberates in my heart, you
Yeah,
know.
beautiful, beautiful. Would any other members of the panel like to come in, you know, in relation to your own experiences of the city growing up, and maybe how they may have shaped you? Dan, Dan, you're on mute.
And even your first impressions of Cork, because we have 2 people who came in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I was 8 years old when my mother brought the family back to Cork, but I had a recent experience last number of years. I had an opportunity of going out on the river with someone who had a dual kayak, so they were doing most of the work, and we actually circumnavigated the city centre island, going under all those bridges, and the thing about the route you just described, Valerie, is the South Channel in particular. As you're coming back, it's largely unseen because quite a lot of it isn't. It isn't bordered by roads, so only across the bridges. So the sides, it's most people, I think, in Cork wouldn't have seen that part of the river, or unless they were on it, and it very much is something that we should be celebrating a lot more and experiencing a lot more. It's the only hazard is on the South Channel is that there are 2 sets of weirs. So you can only travel at certain times when the tide is at a certain height, and the river is tidal up as far as the Riverlea Hotel.
Oh.
So you have to be aware of when the water is working and what it's doing. So, but I think Cork people have already had a sense of that. On the bridges, I just had a look. Officially, we have 42 now, 2 coming in soon, and another 3 coming in, I think, by 2030. So we are close enough to 50 bridges in the city centre alone.
Wow, that's amazing. And it is actually only when thinking about this panel is that myself and Maria were talking is about realizing nearly for the first time that part of the river is invisible to us. right? And kind of think, oh gosh, it actually does separate, and where does it go? You know, so it's really interesting that you even said that, and mentioned that, yeah, and the bridges. I think there's something about the bridges maybe that we could, you know, even inquire into a little bit there. You know, the number of bridges and how it connects the people of the city. And I'd probably connect it there to Marina, your question. So Marina asked a question to the panel: what makes the Cork people so much in love with their land? Can it be shared or somehow cultivated in other cities? As I believe the sense of belonging is the core prerequisite for the urban flourishing and citizen engagement, bridging cultures, reconciling tensions and empowering collaboration. That's, you know, that's a really interesting question. Would anybody like to maybe Barry or Fionnuala or
Yeah.
Karina come in? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just link that to a story that hopefully will, you know, weave its tentacles into that. Like, I remember I was living in a city, in Union Quay, which used to be just up from where Dan operates there, and in an apartment block there. And I remember one Friday evening during the summer back in, it was 1999, and everyone was out drinking and on the quay there, like, you know, in front of Charlie's Bar and the Phoenix and all that. Everyone's finished work, sort of in buoyant mood. And I remember sitting up on the on my balcony looking down at the river, and everyone was getting excited and cheering and what's going on here? And three killer whales swam up the river and came right up into the city. And like one of them, there was a male and a female, and the male had a huge fin on him, like, so it was quite spectacular. And you know, and they came up and they swam around and they swam back down up one channel and up the other channel, and this went on for the whole evening, like, you know, right in the middle of a city, like, you know. And the river at the time, it was pre all the works that was done to clean up the river, and the question was, like, it was fierce excitement amongst everybody, like, and you know, like, everyone was just kind of before the orca came along, they were concentrating their own little patch, but then there was this broader sense of community, this natural event of these orcas swimming up into the city, like. And the question obviously was, like, why are they coming up to the city? And that question was going on for weeks, you know. And subsequently, the body of the female orca washed up in the lower harbour, and they did an analysis, an autopsy on her, and it transpired that she had an illness, and she was looking for safe harbour, you know. And you know, so the question, but that natural event brought everybody together, like, you know, and in a spectacular way, like, I mean. But and just, you know, you can kind of transpose your own kind of meaning into a situation like that, like, you know, was she looking for help from the humans, or was this the place that she always wanted to visit before, you know, she knew she was dying? And you know, it just creates that wonder and connection then, like, as well, like, you know. So I think that, you know, so many people will have sat out beside the river and not really paid attention to what's actually going on in the river, like, you know. And this actually really focused people on this main artery, like, you know. And one other thing, sorry now, just from my diving days, I remember going in to do a dive in the same location, really, and looking at the water one day. We were going in for, you know, unfortunately somebody was missing, and we were looking at the water, and it was like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. So dark, so brown. It was flowing really fast. And, you know, we're all trained, highly trained Navy divers. Like, and we're looking at this going like, I don't like the looks of this. Like, you know, we shouldn't be going in here, like, you know. And it was quite, we're all looking at each other, and we just have to do what we have to do. We have a job to do. Like, we need to find this missing person. And we jumped in, we went down, and about 3 meters from the bottom, everything just, it was like somebody switched on, flicked the switch, and we were in clear water. So the fresh, dirty water was actually flowing above the clear seawater, and we had torches with us. And it was like being in a dark room looking at each other like we couldn't believe it, you know. So again, you didn't know if you hadn't experienced it or hadn't paid attention that this was actually going on. The river is flowing over the tidal seawater that comes up the Cork, and it's underneath there, you know. So it's quite amazing, like, you know, and that memory will never leave me, like, you know, from my experiences, like, you know. And but yeah, so again, paying attention, really noticing what's going on around us is so important, like, you know. And it's all there. We just have to be patient and let nature do the work, you know. So they're my memories.
That's really beautiful. And as you say, I loved that you mentioned it, you know, coming back to the orcas. I remember that actually when they came up into the city. But what's really lovely is, you know, you mentioned safe harbour, and I know, Dan, when we were speaking in relation to the coat of arms of Cork, right? Maybe you might translate what the coat of arms of Cork actually means.
Sure, it's a crest that has a ship traveling between two castles, which no longer exist. It would have been the King's Castle and the Queen's Castle. And actually the water that it's on is now a street, Castle Street, in the center of the city. So it literally pictures the center of the city. But there's a Latin motto underneath it. And in Latin, it's Statio Bene Fide Carinus, which translated means a good harbor, safe for ships, which as a port city, as a harbor, is something that's intrinsic to who we are and what we're about. We've extended that interpretation, and certainly in my term as Lord Mayor, I've tried to articulate that as that it's a good city, safe for people. So the harbor analogy is more than ships. It's about the wider sense of community and the people within those communities, and that's something that we try to take pride in Cork.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And I think, you know, maybe coming back to your question, Marina, right? What is it? You know, it's that maybe the creation of that safe harbor. But I would actually come back to, you know, what Cork sees herself as, and she's not afraid of her voice. She is herself. And I thought it was very interesting, even just from the previous South African group, in relation to, you know, starting with self. And Fionnuala, you spoke about it, starting with self. And I know from a regenerative leadership perspective, Barry, and I know we've had many conversations about that, it starts with the self, really understanding the self and being confident in the self. And maybe that's what it is, that Cork is confident in herself and who she is. And by being confident in herself and not being afraid to be who she is, that creates that safe space, that safe harbour, that island of security, and that welcomes people in. So maybe there's an element of that now. I'm getting very, very kind of flamboyant now, even thinking and really connecting with the city of Cork. But I suppose the city of Cork is very much alive in me now when I say that. So, you know, Karina, I think you wanted to say something, and Fionnuala wants to come in as well.
I was just going to say that last year we brought our crochet ladies to Gouganbarra, you know, and it was an incredible experience, and they were delighted with the trip. And we brought our men's group only last week to the beach, and we've brought people to the water because we're very close to the water in Cork City. But just the people, the cohort of people that we deal with and that we work with, it's the awareness of I suppose the healing that can be gleaned from being by the water is just not there. And it breaks my heart. I remember for World Water Day, we brought people to dance by the beach with my sister Tina. And for a number of those ladies, one lady told me she hadn't been to the seaside in over 6 years. And it breaks my heart, but I feel that we have a huge duty of and responsibility in Cork City and in our work, specifically in the outreach work and in building our communities, to make this feeling of accessibility to the waterways more prominent in the work that we do. It just seems to me like that it's a massive, magnificent resource. We have the river in the center of our cities. We have the beach very close, 20 minutes in a car or in a bus, a half an hour. And still it's the case that people don't understand the healing resource that it is to do something as simple as put your 2 feet into the water and paddle, you know. So especially with the cohort of people that I work with, I really see that there's a disconnect that needs to be regenerated. And I'm loving, Barry, that you're doing that work, because it's just that people don't know. We do a lot of work with Maria Young, Green Spaces for Health, and I know that they've been doing a lot of on the ground work with looking at the waterways, especially in Toker, where I grew up, would have been it's doing much better now, but it would have been an underprivileged, underserved area at the time. But that waterway is really sick, it's really hurted, it's really not well. And we need to really honor our waterways and honor the water that's around us, because it is a huge blessing. And I'd like to finish though by saying that I was at an event recently, and the Cork people were described as social millionaires. And we do have that going for us in terms of the way we chat and communicate, and we are open to, I suppose, being in relationship with anybody on the street. From the person in the shop to the person that you meet at any in any waiting room anywhere, we are open to chatting, but it's about keeping that alive. And I think when people start having conversations and sharing, even when I rang up Valerie the other night to say that I'd be delighted to be part of it, she thought, not knowing me at all, she had thought by my voice that I was my sister. She had thought that it was my sister was ringing her when she heard the voice. She hadn't looked at the number. In that, I always feel in Cork, we're very connected in lots of ways. And the surprise to myself and to Valerie to know that we were actually connected was just, it was a great surprise. But I really feel that the connection to place and people is embedded in our ability to chat. It's the gift that we have. I think it's because we all kissed the Blarney Stone here in Cork. There's a stone in a castle in Cork that says that if you kiss it, you get the gift of the gap. I must have kissed it several times, and everybody here too, I think.
Lovely, Karina. And Fionnuala, I'd love to, Fionnuala, if you'd like to come in there, I think you put your hand up as well. But you definitely the gift of the gap. Absolutely sure. And just to confirm, when my phone rang, I first of all thought it was my mother. And then I thought it was a neighbour of mine who I had just spoken to the day before, and I had worked with, 20, 30 years ago. And I said, "Oh, it's Lisa." And she said, "No, this isn't Lisa, this is Karina." And she said, "Lisa is my sister." What are the chances? I never knew that. So yeah, so the connection. So Fionnuala, did you want to come in there? You're on mute.
Yeah, just talking about the river. I think I can't let it go that it's so part of, I use it so much for my job because part of it is directing people places, and it's such a handy way to direct people. Because usually part of my work is sitting with someone where they're at and then trying to see how can I get this person who has no idea where they are from point A to point B. And sometimes I have my laptop and I'm using Google Maps trying to, or sometimes I'll go for a little walk. But the river is such a good marker. People will ask, is it the first river or the second river I'm flying to where before the river comes together? But I'm always using it as markers in the bridges as well. I'm like, you'll cross 2 bridges. There'll be 2 bridges you'll walk past. So it's actually a great way for me to help people get to where they're going and locate places. And also coming back to Cork and the love of Cork, I think there's this rebellious spirit that Cork has, and it's a rebel county for a reason. But I think there's, going back to cities of learning, Cork is so interested in just being better, being bigger, and growing. And I think it absorbs like what enters it, what comes into contact with it, And there's this kind of beautiful spirit to just lead the way almost, and to do something different, try something different. And I really felt that, and I think that in the work I do and the people I work with gives so much courage and hope to how the city could be in a few years time. But it's always growing in all these different ways. There's always a million things happen that crosses between each other. And to go back to the tapestry imagery, I think there's so much of that, and it's just layered. But I think part of this love is just you can find your way, and you can be who you are, and you can create the type of Cork that you want to see for yourself.
Beautiful. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful, Fionnuala. Yeah, no, I mean, the conversation is just so rich in relation to our connection and being self. So maybe I hope, Marina, that would help you maybe to understand maybe our connection to the city, and even and the beauty of it is that we're full of blow-ins. We're all blow-ins in one way or another. And everybody is welcome. Maria, you'd like
Yeah.
to come in, and I'm very conscious that I cannot believe we're coming to the stage
Yeah.
of the 2 hours. We could keep going for many hours yet to come. So I think, Maria, you're going to kind of maybe take the story that we started,
That's it.
pull threads, and maybe continue with the story. So over to you.
Go riv míle maith le mo clan, so 100,000 welcomes to my Cork family that have been on this beautiful conversation with us today. And I've been listening in to the other conversations, which were amazing, from Africa and from New Zealand, and there's a few threads that we could weave into a story of this conference. But today, is Misha Go Corky. I am the Cork voice, and I've been collecting the embarrassment of wealth of threads from my colleagues, and I've made a little story. So this is the story of Soul of our City, Annam Cathric, Soul of the City. There was a beautiful girl. Her name was Emerald Murphy. Her father went to the Congo as part of a peacekeeping mission, and there he met amazing people. People who sang like he remembered, people who told stories, people who invested in the rhythm of words, not just their meaning, but the music of the idir, the music of the in-between. And he fell in love there. And now in his lap, he held his beautiful daughter. Her mother said she fell in love with him because of his emerald eyes, his beautiful green eyes that reflected the soul of Ireland from where he had come from. And in her daughter's eyes, when she first opened them, she saw those same flecks of green. And she named her daughter Emerald, for the love that she had for the father. Many years later, Emerald decided to leave her native home in the Republic of Congo and come across the seas and the countries to Ireland, where she became a nurse. And she found she was a bit shy here with these people with loud opinions and happy voices, and she thought, I will not study straight away. I will get to know the city, for the city herself has a personality, and that was wise. The first thing she noticed was the Kyo Driokta rising from the river, the magical mist, and she decided she wanted to sit into that mist. So she hired a man to bring her down the river. And on that October evening, the mist rose as thick as soup, as full of magic, full of shape-shifting as she could have wished. Through this mist, she saw these spires that seemed to float in thin air, and she remembered her father's voice, the city of the spires. And as she went under yet another bridge, she smiled to herself, for her father had told her this was also the city of bridges and the city of hills, the city of magic, the city of shape-shifting, the city of strong women. And she wanted to be one of those strong women. She remembered Mother Jones, who had left during the famine, and even though she had heartbreak herself, she cast her abilities and her energy to making sure that the children who were diving down the mines to make enough to eat were looked after. The woman who started the trade union movements. She remembered then the talk of Nano Nagle, a rebel of her time who could not be boxed in, who had been educated in Paris, France, but could not help and see the people who were not educated, who needed to rise themselves out of poverty. Her people too. And as she thought about this, they came to Boyle, where her father had left from, where the Irish Navy was. And the man who was making the ship go down the river, he told her about this, and she told him what she knew, and he laughed to think of the fame of Boyle in other countries. And the next island was Spike Island. There's something about it, she said. There's something about it. Can I alight here at this island? You can, he said, but I can't come with you, and you will be there for 2 hours while I go and do my next job. She alighted onto the island, and it felt like a ghost island. It felt like a place caught in time between worlds. She couldn't see her own feet, and she had a sense that she was floating herself. And then she saw the lady with the lamp, and she was swinging that lamp, and she had the old cloak, the Kinsale cloak, her father had said, and she was more fascinated than she was afraid. The woman never spoke, but she brought her around the island, and as she did, she could feel her feet sticking to the ground, and she thought, maybe I do belong here. Finally, she came to a kind of a flat ship, and the woman, sprightly beyond her years, she jumped onto that ship, and Emerald followed her, and they went back down the river, and the mist began to rise and thicken, and they got off in Patrick Street, and it looked different. What was different about Patrick Street? The lights were different. Mangan's clock looked new. There wasn't a sinner on the place, and a little girl ran down the street. "Help us," she said. "Can you help us?" The woman held her lamp up and looked into the face of Emerald. Emerald spoke to the girl, thinking, this woman cannot speak. "What is it you need?" My mother is about to give birth to a baby." Emerald couldn't believe it. On Patrick Street? Did people live on Patrick Street? Were there people who had their homes on this iconic street? And with that thought in her head, she followed the little girl to steps that were outside the house. And when she came in, she could see that the woman was in trouble. With all of her knowledge of midwifery from where she had come from in the Congo, she turned the baby in the belly of the woman, and the birth was safe, and the child was delivered, and everybody celebrated over a cup of tea. It was then that the woman with the lamp knocked on her lamp as if the time was up. They went back to the platform and back to Spike Island, where she alighted. And as they did, she could hear through the fog a man singing, Beautiful city, charming and pretty. Beautiful city, my home by the Lee. Did you have a good time on Spike? He shouted. It's magic, she said, and she turned to share a smile with the woman of the lamp. But there was no sign of that woman, and she felt as if she was going a small bit mad. He took her in to Cork City, and she got off in the same place on Patrick Street. Everybody was laughing and joking, and she heard a session going on. She went in, and when she heard the singing and the storytelling and the music, she felt as if her spirit was home, for in it she recognized her father. And someone sang a song from Africa, not from her piece of Africa, but it made her smile. La bizzo la morena Jesu, hale boque, hale boque, hale boque. And when she saw all the smiling people clapping along to the song, knowing the words, it made her feel at home. And in the corner, a woman kept staring at her. And so she went over. Do I know you? She said. I think you do, she said. I think you do. How is it I know you? She said. My mother told me this night would come, that I just had to come to this session. My mother was in trouble, giving birth to me, she said. And a nurse came, borrowed from time, with beautiful dark skin and flecks of green in her eye. That woman was you. You came through time, you came through changes, you came through culture, so that I could be here tonight. They threw their arms around one another. What a blessing to have arrived in this corner of the world, in Cork, the wetlands.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was absolutely beautiful, and all the beautiful threads that you wove together from today's lovely gathering. It was really, really beautiful. So here we are, would you say nearly at the top of 2 hours. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here. And Marina, again, thank you so much for inviting us into this beautiful gathering and all the lovely people that we've met. We very much look forward to continuing this connection, and it feels just like the beginning. So just for the last few minutes, does anybody on the panel, is there anything else that you would like to say? But I would like to thank each and every one of you for really being here and bringing your voices forward. So just for the last few minutes, if there's anybody has anything they would like to say.
Thank you for this magic experience. It was a truly magic.
It was absolutely beautiful. And, for hopefully, for ourselves, I mean, the connection even across the panel is enriched by it. I certainly feel it's enriched. So, connection can be very local. It can be very personal. It can be community-wide. It can be global. And the impact that we have as individuals, but collectively, is so powerful. And that's what this really has brought alive for me. So I'm hugely grateful.
Valerie, just on behalf of the Cork team as well, we're so grateful for you. Thank you for bringing us together and reaching out to everybody. And what a beautiful cross section of Cork you brought together. It's been a complete pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, there's Barry.
It's Barry, weaving.
You are a master weaver, Valerie Gleeson. You are
yes.
a master weaver. Thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
thank you for the team and the Connectathon team who gave us such a beautiful opportunity and a wonderful platform to contact and to intersect and to dance together and to sing together.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Gur míle maith agaibh.
And look, we might connect actually again. We'd love to meet over a cup of tea and kind of see how our conversation can continue. So leave it with me, and I'll look to arrange that. So Marina, thank you so much. I think you continue on to have you have another hour, or this is it. This is it. Wow, what an amazing event! Congratulations.
We do have two more hours of the Connectathon before we end, and I'd love for you to stay. I think you'd like connecting with the next speakers.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.